Mr. Miracle number 11, obviously Mitch Gerrard's on the art as well. Sorry, Gerrard's. I should say Gerrard's. We know it's a hard G now.
It's,
Gerrard's.
yeah.
Mitch Gerrard's. But, yeah, so this is the penultimate issue of Mr. Miracle. A book
Hmm.
that's now been going for just over a year. It started in, I think, August last year.
Yeah.
And obviously it should have been finished in July, but obviously there's been some delays here or there because
But that's
Gerrard's...
okay. Yeah.
Do you know what's funny, actually? Gerrard's, when he started working on this, his wife wouldn't have been pregnant yet, but he ended up having a
No.
kid.
Yeah.
Actually, no, it was a few months ago. Maybe she was
She
pregnant.
was
Yeah,
pregnant. You know, his kid was still gestating.
but like, what I'm saying is the majority of that 9 months of pregnancy would have been while he was working
Hmm.
on this book, and then
Yeah.
he had the kid, and then all of a sudden the schedule started to slip back. Understandably
Yeah.
so. This is not criticizing. I'm just
Yeah.
pointing out the timeline here being kind of funny. But
Mhm.
so they agreed to give the baby little Jakey to Darkseid,
Yeah.
but they're going to try and kill him. And a lot of the issue is them standing there in the throne room with Darkseid and pretending to hand over Jakey. There's some humor, of course, is like the guy, the Darkseid's Lord is like, "You're lying. You're going to try and kill the Lord," and he's like,
Yeah.
"What? Yeah, with my escaping. Yeah, I'm going to escape him to death." And they kind of convince him with how ridiculous a notion that is,
Yeah.
and and
They're not wrong though.
I don't know,
Like,
they're
so
completely right.
can I just talk about Darkseid eating a veggie tray and dipping the carrot in a ranch
I, well,
and just how
I think
surreal it is?
I want to add on to that. What really makes it is that the previous page ends with Mr. Miracle saying, "Don't underestimate the power of a veggie tray," and then you turn the
Yep.
page and Darkseid's looking down at it and he's like, "Yeah, all right, I'll have
Yep.
one."
Just and the whole scene that leads up to that is them getting everyone ready because they're gonna go, and then again how this smashes up real life with superhero and cosmic gods when Barda's like, I left my effing mother box. Almost like when someone like when you leave your phone behind, like you get out the door, and you're like, oh man, I left my cell phone. I gotta go freaking back
hmm
and get it. I just oh man, this team works together so well.
Oh, they absolutely do. And the whole thing's a standoff, and I love that you have obviously the 9 panel grids here, but for a lot of the early stuff in this book, where Darkseid's sitting on his throne, he actually takes up three
Yep.
panels. Obviously, the split's
Yep.
still there, but it's like he's so big he needs 3 panels. But
Yep.
Miracle and Barda are in one little panel in the middle, and the 2 panels on the sides are their sections. Because think of
Mhm.
the 9 panels here in the first half of this book when they get to the throne room, is being in 3 rows, right? And
Right.
each row is either Dark Side or the Barda and Miracle panels, and in their panels they have 2 empty panels at the sides that are just more of the room, showing how small they
Hmm.
are in the frame. Whereas Dark Side takes up all 3 panels, and he's like this huge, larger than life figure.
Oh,
He's foreboding, if you will. So that's a couple of pages there until it gets into more stuff, and he's taking the baby.
yeah.
Darkseid rips out his own freaking eye because he's like, okay, well, we need the anti-life equation, and he's like, well, it's knowledge, I
Yeah.
can't not know it, but I can only use it if I've got my eyes for my beams. So here,
Yeah.
have an eye.
Also, the way that King describes the anti-life equation is perfect now, because now I actually have an exact, you know, how to understand it, where it's basically, it's not death, right? Because it's anti-life. So
hmm
it basically just takes away your self-control. Like you're beholden to someone else now.
Hmm.
And if that's not or something else, not just someone, and if that's not an analogy for depression, I don't know what is. Because you're not dead, but you don't feel fully alive. And, the whole dark side is he's the one that does it all. But it's subtle at the same time. And
Yeah,
unless you're looking for this, it's not there. So, but yeah, much like Odin, he rips out his own eye.
yeah.
Uh,
Also, Barda squishes it in her hand. She just goes,
yeah, I don't
"Bleh."
care. Yep.
It's gold. Really touching stuff as Miracle's talk saying goodbye to his son. Of course, there's the moment where he's like, "I've got her," or "I've got him," and she's like, "Good,"
Hmm.
and she picks up the buggy, and they've got the
Yep.
the weapon, which is formed from energy they took during one of the last crisis,
Yep.
which
During a crisis a while back, because I'm wondering if it was Final Crisis because they bring up the Miracle
yeah
Machine,
Yeah, who
And if I
knows?
remember my Final Crisis, that the Miracle Machine is what Superman was able to resurrect on that planet with lost IP, or wherever he was, like in Limbo. Is
Yeah,
the Superman Beyond issue. Um, and yeah, so it's powered with that, and nothing can stop it. And they've tried. Barta says nothing stops it. So in other words, there is no escape.
yeah.
So, uh,
But
so good.
he managed to resist it, and he comes up and punches her, and that's when we get the one
Yep.
Darkseid is panel, and then he says,
Yep.
"Yes, I am." Now, of course, it works in context of the scene because she calls him a bastard first, and he says, "Yes, I am" to
Yeah.
that. But it works so well because it says Darkseid is, and he's like, "Yes, I am."
Mm-hmm.
It's so perfect to finally get this. It's so weird to just cut to Darkseid in this book because the one image we've had of him up until now was that weird image when Orion was killed. You know, that weird, like,
Yep.
foreboding negative space kind of image. But then
Yep.
we get this fight where I love the 9 panel grid where Scott's on the ground and at the bottom of the page, the 3 panels, the shadow of Darkseid just gradually
Yeah.
comes over him. It's so good. Uh, but it turns out they had the hidden weapon, the dagger, in the veggie tray. This whole time, the veggie tray was the secret weapon.
Never underestimate the power of a veggie tray.
It's the Farron knife, which was made out of Orion, who, as legend says, is the only thing that could ever kill Darkseid. So he stabs him in his eye,
Right? So the
and
prophecy still goes.
yeah, and
Uh,
the win. And I love how we come back to the family thing where Barda's like, "Hey, what was all that mother effering in front of Jakey?" And she's like, "Well, you said you swore as well," and they just kind of have this
yeah.
bickering about swearing in front of the kid, and that's when
Well,
everything.
when she goes,
Yeah.
yeah, because where's the line? She said, what happened to escape this? And he's like, oh, it was in the moment that he
Mm-hmm.
went straight to the FU, which I thought that was pretty great. And then
But
he goes, his first word's going to be the F word.
yeah,
Uh, and there's a whole running joke where when Jake grabs Darkseid by the nose and he says na 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 na, and Scott's like, yeah, that's his word for nose. And then they argue over, he's like, well, that's just gibberish, and he calls something else something close to it and stuff.
yeah.
So I like that Scott's like, well, he already has first words. Like, don't worry about that.
But this
Uh,
this this is when the book goes wacky. This is when it introduces something else
yep.
completely out of the blue. Obviously, this entire face-off with Darkseid is really fulfilling. It's really well drawn. It's really well plotted, and the pacing of the encounter, the conflict, that ultimately they win, and it feels usually there's a big relief, and you feel happy. And then Metron shows up.
Yep.
Yeah, we get the video effect as well just before he shows up. Because the guy in the cloak that was working for Darkseid sits down, the video effect
Is
happens, he pulls the hood back, and it's Metron. And
Well, it's not so much a video effect as it is a digital effect, where it's something's like buffering. You know what I mean? Like it to me, it didn't look like the same like tracking you do on a VHS. It was a little bit more advanced, if that
well,
makes
it's
sense.
interesting. That's interesting. I was about to say what you're talking about, and then I'm looking at it. I'm like, you're right. It looks a little
Yeah.
bit different to the effect that we've had up until this point.
Yeah,
I don't know what to read into that though specifically,
I
but
don't either. Well, it's still a disturbance of some kind. I still
yeah,
think we read it because that's how I read it still. But
but it's different.
I, yeah, I don't know if it's because it's Metron and it's not something else. You know, like I don't know.
But yeah, but we've been using that to mean something the entire time. I don't
Mhm.
think it being Metron changes that specifically. I feel like it's more about the nature of what's affecting it rather
Yeah,
than
yeah, yeah.
the fact that it's Metron. But he basically says, "Oh, you've challenged the unchallenged. You've faced the ultimate fear, the death, and you're going to take your final bow." And he says, "You are not where you should be, scot free." And then you turn the page, and for the first time, I believe in the entire book, since the opening pages of the first issue,
Yeah.
we get something that's not an 9 panel grid. We get a 2 page spread, and it's a 2 page spread of the DCU. It's current Flash, Superman, Wally West, Barda, Orion's there, bunch of
Swamp
Supergirl,
Thing looking like Alan Moore.
Nightwing. Yeah,
Um,
it's very much the current present day DCU.
yep.
This is what these
You, you
characters
got
are.
you got John and Streaky,
But
but if you look closer, you have Jack Knight with the Cosmic Staff. right? He's right above Supergirl.
Okay,
Um,
sure, yeah.
there's Firestorm. I'm trying to see who else. No. You have Wallace West right next to Barda.
Yeah, so the point
Uh,
being, it's current DCU.
yeah.
That this is everyone and then some
Yep.
of the current DCU, which then implies that that's not where we've been all this time.
Nope.
That's what that means, and it's funny because since the start of the book, every so often it's like, well, Darkseid or whatever's showing up in Green Lantern Corps. What's going on? Does
Right.
this line up? What's happening? What about Wonder Woman with
Yeah.
Darkseid, baby? What's happening? And ultimately, like the obvious fear here is that this is just out of continuity. And it seems like it's not out of continuity per se in the sense that it's actually just out of continuity, but it's the obvious way to read this, I think, and it might be more deeper than this, but it feels like to me that Metron's either had him in a place separately to learn a lesson, or this is where he's been the entire time. Like my guess, and maybe this is too obvious. My guess would be that when he tried to commit suicide at the start of the book, this has just been kind of either, I don't want to say just in his head, but
Right.
this world that he's been in for the last 12 issues since he committed suicide or tried to commit suicide is
Hmm.
this world where he is learning to live again. He's learning to deal with his fears and what he's going through, which is kind of
Well,
a shame because it means we're losing the kid. It means we're losing the fact that he had a kid with Barda and stuff. But it means that when we get Mr. Miracle back in the main DCU, everything that happened was important in that it's informed who he's become. Like he's changed
hmm.
because of this experience.
So
So
so the way that I read this was, so it's always been the fourth world, right? And if I know my Kirby well, and so if I don't, people correct me, is that Earth was meant to be the fifth world and the superheroes. That was what would
mm,
bring the fifth world around. And that in order for the cycle to close, Darkseid had to be defeated. And so here, the fourth world cycle is completed, and now whatever's going on in Rebirth, that's the new cycle. So it's almost like this is the last story before Rebirth, if you will, at least for the New Gods. Um, how that all fits in, because you see Araya and Barda and Light Ray in that image, whatever that's supposed to mean, I'm not too sure. But,
I think that's what it
but yeah,
says to me that it's not been the real DCU or not the same DCU
right,
up until this point. But
right,
clearly, of course, they reference Batman a ton. He's got all those T-shirts. Clearly,
right.
they know who all these characters are,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but they've not. Which is why I think like he's been somewhere else since he tried to commit suicide.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Almost like on Lost, so spoilers for Lost, which is, 8 years old at this point. This is almost like maybe he was in a sideways where this was all these things personified, that he was
Hmm.
aware of, and that's what that drinking scene was about, with the blue and the gold and the red and the yellow, and you know what I mean? Like that was Ted and Booster, but just different, like they
Yeah.
were his. Yeah.
Well, I mean, to put it simply, when you mention Orion being there, it's just as simple. Orion's not dead. He didn't really die.
Right.
That didn't happen. At
Right.
least not unless this is an alternate world. In which case, okay, it happened in this world. But I'm not sure it is an alternate world. I feel like it might actually
No.
be. I mean, it could be. It could be what you said about the fourth world, fifth
Yeah.
world. It could be all that stuff, or it could be simply this is a place that he's went to when he tried to kill himself, and Metron's here to retrieve him. Maybe Metron put him here in the first place. Maybe this is a place of Scott's
Right.
recreation. Maybe it's not. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I feel like whatever King's about to do in the final issue next month is going to recontextualize the entire story,
Mhm.
which is exciting.
Yeah, which is weird because this almost feels like the end because they triumph,
Yeah,
right? So next is, what's it called in the movie, the denouement, right? Where it's like the after the climax, right? So
yeah,
this was the climax, and this is all the fallout from it is going to be issue 12, which is cool. But yeah, remember when I wasn't going to read this?
because you're a
Like
fool,
the first issue,
and we had to talk you
yeah,
into it.
yeah, and now I'm glad that I have. Like I can't wait till it's released in a hardcover, so I can just pick it up and, because this feels like one of those all time stories,
Oh,
you
absolutely,
know.
yeah. This is one of those things that's going to be on a shelf next to your Long Halloween and your Dark Knight Returns and
Mm-hmm.
your Birthright. These just standalone 12
Yep.
issue stories that's just going to stand the
Yep.
test of time. Um, Now, it was a great issue, as per usual. The entire story's been fantastic, but I feel like this ending's leading to a final issue that's going to recontextualize what all this has meant and how it's been him working through his issues essentially. So we'll see how that is, but really freaking good, basically.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the thing, is I think the first like 2/3 of the book, which are just the conflict with Darkseid, I think they really work in just the sense of, no, this is the conclusion to the conflict we've had the entire book,
Yep.
and it has the drama and the suspense of the actual tension of the moment, but then this final moment, this ending, kind of says, hey, this actually does connect to the rest of the DCU in some small way, and we're going to explore how that is in the next issue. And the only fear is that it's going to feel, it could, in lesser hands, it could feel cheap, that it was all a dream, I suppose.
Yeah.
What it could end up being, but
I want to give King and Gerard's credit that they're not going to make it all a dream. Like, there will be stakes going forward, because they've turned Mr. Miracle into a character that I do really care about. Like, if, in any form, if this version can exist, like, I'd like to see more of him. So
yeah, we'll see how it wraps up next month. But that is number 11. What are you rating them at?
9.5.
Oof, yeah. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. 9.5.
Yep.
So it's a stonker.
Really good issue.
It's a stonker of an issue.
I was full of dread the whole time, because I remember at the end of the last issue they said, no, we're going to kill Darkseid. But I didn't know if the plan wasn't going to go on. Like, if Darkseid's always like, well, no. Say, I knew you were going to do this, so I have my own plans in order. And I thought, oh no, he's going to lose, because Darkseid is.
Yeah.
And then when he pulls the knife out of the veggie tray, I was reading this at work and I fist pumped. So
because I mean,
yeah.
we've been saying the whole time how Darkseid is more a representation of the ever-present feeling and the anxiety and the depression that he has. So arguably, if he's worked through his issues, then the Darkseid in this world should be dead, because he's gotten over that. Right. He's fought that, and he's defeated it. Therefore, Darkseid no longer is. So
Darkseid was,
but he isn't.